I still don't know how to feel about this one. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And that's it, we've got the here we go from Fabrizio Romano. Noni Madueke will be moving to Arsenal for £52 million. Man, I still really don't know how to feel about this one. I guess the thing is, the balance is the tangible positives, right? The things that are actually good about this move against the intangible negatives. And those being squarely the potential, what we thought we could get out of him in the future. Because truth be told, Noni Madueke hasn't set the world alight in a Chelsea shirt. And if you're like myself as a Chelsea fan, if you're disappointed about this move, then it's surely only going to be based on what we thought Noni Madueke could achieve rather than what he's actually done. So let's dive a little bit into column A and column B, shall we? And we'll start with the positives. £52 million is an amazing deal for what is turning into a fringe player, right? Pedro Neto has absolutely locked down that right-hand spot and even features better on the left than Noni Madueke does when he plays. We've got Esteval Willian coming in, so what this also does is remove a potential headache for the manager when you've got lots of players that are sat around and happy because they're not getting enough minutes. And that means that we can go a bit more all in on Esteval now. And based on what we've seen from him so far, obviously lots of highlights up until recently, and his performance in the Club World Cup, especially against us with that absolutely amazing goal. It's a really good thing that Esteval Willian's going to have more space and room to breathe and kind of become a Chelsea player. You've got to give props to the Blueco boys. They are wicked at selling. One of our last technical directors, Marina Granovskaya, under the Roman Abramovich era, was hailed for being one of the best negotiators in all of football. But as far as I can see, Blueco have just kind of picked up where she left off because they are just smashing it with these deals, man. So yeah, the positives are that is a decent chunk of change for a player that was struggling to get into our first team, and it's going to allow more breathing room for other players to come in. And I guess largely you'd have to say losing that attitude problem that we can see from Madueke is probably good for squad harmony as well. And now we'll move into column B, which I would call the negatives. And yeah, like I said, it's almost entirely potential, isn't it? We have seen flashes of brilliance from Noni Madueke over the 2.5 years that he's been with us. Noni Madueke has always threatened to look like a good player. And every now and again, like the hat-trick against Wolves or the goal against Arsenal, you've looked at him and gone, oh wow, there's a real player here. But then he just kind of tends to go missing. He's a little bit of a selfish player compared to someone like Pedro Neto, for instance, who's just 100% there for the team. But yeah, we just never saw enough consistency out of Noni Madueke for this really to be terrible for us. If we didn't have the likes of Esteval Willian waiting in the wings to just come in and take that spot straight away, who was also 5 years his junior, then it'd be a bit of a more bitter pill to swallow, because that would say, okay, now we've got to go out and spend 50 mil plus to replace Madueke, but we don't need to replace him because the replacement's already there. So yeah, man, I guess I really am just torn by the potential side of it. Truth be told, we haven't had enough tangible impact from Madueke. He hasn't got enough numbers. He hasn't shown enough flashes of brilliance, and he has frustrated more often than not. So it is squarely just about lamenting what could have been rather than being like, oh my God, he's just had an amazing season. Why are we selling him to Arsenal? And there's a few interesting points from the Arsenal side of this to talk about as well. I think it's fair to say that the fan base is split on this signing. And I say split, it doesn't even seem like a divide. I can't say I've seen much from Arsenal fans yet being really excited about bringing Noni Madueke in for this amount of money. But to be fair, they are in dire need of reinforcement on the wings. Bukayo Saka has been taking that right wing spot solo for years now. And if we're seeing one thing quite recently, it is that if you start a player really early in his career like Bukayo Saka did, if they're not managed properly and they play for too long, their legs can start to go a little bit before you would expect them to. There is an example of that in Raheem Sterling, right? The big conversation about Raheem Sterling is he is not even 30 yet, or maybe he's just turned 30, I'm not sure. But either way, he seems to have fallen a bit by the wayside, a little bit before his time, because he has been playing Premier League football since the age of 17 years old. And it's the same with Saka. So a player like Noni Madueke is an excellent deputy to someone like Saka. But they're not spending £52 million on a deputy, are they? There is literally a hashtag that's been started by Arsenal fans pertaining to the Noni Madueke move. Hashtag not Madueke has been trending for the last few days. So that tells you there is an enormous chunk of this fan base that is not up for this move. And that is worth a few million in itself. Maybe this is a bit controversial, but I find it a little bit interesting that they're willing to start a hashtag and a movement because they don't want Noni Madueke to come and play on their team. But over what's been going on with Thomas Partey for the last few years, Absolutely nothing. I'm just saying priorities, right? But yeah, man, that's it. And if news is to be believed, it makes even more sense at the moment because supposedly Leandro Trossard has just agreed terms with Fenerbahce as well. So not only will Madueke be a support for Bukayo Saka, he might actually be fighting for that starting spot on the left wing because at the moment they've got Martinelli and Ethan Nwaneri, and if they want to go for this big title push, you know, they've just bought Zubimendi, they're talking about bringing in Gyökeres, then Madueke is likely to get a lot of minutes, and although obviously a right winger is his natural position, you would assume he's going to be happy to play on that left wing, otherwise I wouldn't have thought he'd have made this move in the first place. Noni Madueke doesn't think he's going to Arsenal and getting in over Bukayo Saka. Even with Noni Madueke's ego, that's obviously just not going to happen, right? But maybe he sees a shot in playing over Martinelli, obviously Trossard's potentially out the door as well. Nwaneri's still really, really young, so that must be where he sees his future, I guess. But you can never tell with Mikel Arteta, can you? He might try something crazy, like putting Saka as a striker or playing Noni Madueke in midfield. You can never really tell. He definitely likes to experiment and try things out. But yeah, that's it. Noni Madueke out the door. I think the timing's not amazing. Obviously, it hasn't actually been announced yet. You know, Fabrizio Romano has dropped the news saying that we've got the here we go and it's absolutely going to happen. But just before the Club World Cup final, that's a little bit annoying. So tell me, how do you feel, Chelsea fans? Would you still like to see Noni Madueke feature in the Club World Cup final? I don't think he'll start. I'm going to get my preview video out either tonight or tomorrow. But either way, do you think he deserves a send-off? Do you think he's done enough to get a round of applause from the Chelsea fans one last time? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. So we will move on from Noni Madueke because that's what we've got to do in actual real life now. So I will start by doing it in this video. And I will do that by moving on to another big name that we've been linked with. And I'm still not absolutely sure this one will go through, but there is something to say it might be possible. And that is, of course, Rodrygo of Real Madrid. So Rodrygo's camp have told Real Madrid that he is not happy and he wants to leave the Spanish capital if he's not going to get minutes. Real Madrid have graciously agreed and will not stand in Rodrygo's way if a suitor can be found and a good deal can be struck. So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. Arsenal are also supposedly very interested in Rodrygo. But do they spend £52 million on Noni Madueke and then go in and spend 70 plus on Rodrygo all in one window on top of Zubimendi, Gyökeres? I don't know, man. We're not really used to seeing Arsenal spend this kind of money. Do you know what I mean? So history would say no, but who knows? Maybe they really see this as their year for that title charge and the board are willing to give Arteta what he wants. Another option, of course, is that he comes to Chelsea. Now, a little while ago, I actually thought our left wing situation was kind of done. Obviously, we've brought in Jamie Gittins and we've just brought in João Pedro, and I assumed that João Pedro was potentially going to mostly feature on that left wing. But that doesn't look to be the case, does it? He looks like he's come in to play the number 9 spot, and while I'm sure he can feature out on that left wing, if he's predominantly going to be fighting with Liam Delap for that spot up top, then that might still leave us a little bit light in that left wing. Maresca definitely favours versatile players at the moment, and maybe that was one of the problems with Noni Madueke. His obvious strengths lay on the right, and he can do a job on the left, but we don't really necessarily want someone that can just do a job. We want someone who can come in and play that position like they own it, even if that is only temporary and they're going to be shifted around. So Rodrygo is super comfortable on both wings. He spent a lot of time playing out on the right for Real Madrid, despite his favoured position being the left, but when you've got Vinny Jr., you're just not going to get that much game time there, are you? So Rodrygo is an expensive buy. It's not even just the upfront money, right? You know, 70 mil plus, yeah, okay, that's one thing. But Chelsea aren't going to break their wage structure for anyone, are they? I highly doubt that Rodrygo's going to come in on 200 grand plus a week when the likes of Cole Palmer are going to be below that. Team harmony is really important, and there's not much else bringing in a player on astronomical wages to upset the apple cart. But Rodrygo is an excellent player. He had maybe not his best season the last season, but for like the 3 seasons before that, he almost consistently always scores 10 goals and gets 5 assists. So that's comfortably really good numbers for a winger. I'm not 100% sure about this one. It feels like, yeah, it would be great because he's a Galactico and he's a superstar, and, you know, we don't really generally tend to buy those sorts of players. So it would definitely be a good vibe and a good feeling to bring in someone for the now, for the moment, even though he's young. It's not just about potential with Rodrygo. He's kind of proved on the biggest stages that he can just do it day in, day out. But we'll have to see. I released a video yesterday about us being linked to Morgan Rogers. And although I do primarily see him as a midfielder, it is possible that he could do a job out there on the left as well. But so could Madueke. So I don't know. It's all swings and roundabouts, isn't it? It's a bit of a strange one. But if we did manage to get Rodrygo, that would only compound the misery of the Arsenal fan base at the moment with having spent all that money on Noni Madueke and then missing out on their preferred left-wing target. And I tell you what, if Arsenal do get Rodrygo, Noni Madueke's not going to be happy, is he? Because then he will have just left Chelsea being a backup and he's going to walk straight into an Arsenal team still being a backup. So even if I struggle to give my entire blessing to the Noni Madueke move, there are some little reasons why it is good for us. Even if that's just, it's bad for Arsenal. So So guys, if you are enjoying the content, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, or subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. I am this close to 300 subs and I really need your guys' help, so come on. Click those buttons, let's do it. 300 subs, here we go. Okay, so let's get into a few more of the outgoings that are purported for Chelsea in the news at the moment. Matisse Amugu, the young midfielder that we bought from France last season, is being sold on a permanent deal to Strasbourg. Now, this is really interesting for a couple of reasons. I recently did a video on Blueco and the Strasbourg situation, and in that video I intimated that long term, I think the plan of Blueco is to replace the current loan system with these small purchases and sales between clubs that they own. You're only able to loan 3 players at one time to any club, and we've got potentially 4+ players that we would like to be playing at Strasbourg next season. We've already seen this happen with the likes of Diego Moreira, who we bought for like 2 mil and sold to Strasbourg for 8, and now the same thing seems to be happening with Matisse Amugu. And with the likes of Kendry Paez and Mike Penders and others still potentially going to be on their way to Strasbourg on loan this season, it makes sense to make a sale so we can still facilitate being able to get those players out on loan. And this obviously makes sense for Strasbourg, and not only because of us just bringing back Andre Santos from loan, but also they've just sold their other top midfielder, Habib Diarra, to Sunderland for 30 mil. So Strasbourg are going through quite a big rebuild of their own right now. And this to me just feels like another step on the way to the evolution of football business that Blueco are trying to implement, with buying clubs and replacing loans with small purchases that are affordable. I won't go too crazy into the numbers, but if we think about amortization and how much this makes us versus how much it cost them, I think we bought Amugu for like 6 or 7 mil and we're selling him for 15. So we're making 8 or 9 million on that deal that goes on our books right now, and Strasbourg will only have to pay 3 mil a season. So it's affordable for them. It gets a nice little chunk of change on our books. Matisse Amugu gets a new spot, and technically it's kind of like he's out on loan. Do you know what I mean? There'll be a buyback clause. If he goes out there and does really well, then we'll be able to buy him back whenever we want for a really affordable price. And if we don't and we want to sell him, then we'll be able to tack more money on top of that because of how well he's done and be in control of the whole thing. So I think this is just the model, right? I think this is it. I think we'll start to see it even more depending on the next club that Chelsea buy. The last rumours about that were being Sporting Lisbon, but nothing concrete yet, so we'll still wait and see. But I just think that this is the idea of the multi-club model, right? It just gives you a bit more flexibility and legroom with transfers and making money and making things work for both clubs. We didn't really see much of him in a Chelsea shirt anyway, so I'm not exactly disappointed that he's going. But yeah, Matisse Amugu to Strasbourg is on. And I'm just going to wrap up the news video with 2 more outgoings that we are talking about. No concrete news on them yet, but they're both probably going to happen. So Petrovic is wanted by Bournemouth, and that makes sense. Kepa was their keeper last year. Kepa's now gone to Arsenal. Petrovic excluded himself from the Club World Cup because he wasn't going to be guaranteed minutes, and we're looking at making 25 mil for him, which is again probably like 15 mil plus worth of profit based on what we bought him for. And yeah, this one for me is a shame. I really would have liked to have seen Petrovic in a Chelsea shirt this season. I don't think I can do another season of Robert Sanchez as our number 1. It is just, my heart can't take it. And none of the other keepers we've got in the book seem ready to just come in and take that spot either. But you'd have to think there's probably going to be some sell-on clause or buyback option included into this deal, bearing in mind we're selling him for 25 mil, which for a keeper of his ability who's just had the season that he's had is a really good deal for them. So yeah, this one seems to be edging closer. It seems there's a lot of interest in Petrovic either way. If it's not Bournemouth, it'll be somewhere else. Supposedly there were 5 different clubs interested in Petrovic, and you'd imagine for the price that absolutely makes sense. So we'll have to see where this one goes, but I wouldn't be surprised to hear more about this one soon. And last but not least, Benfica are edging closer to a deal for João Felix. Now, I haven't seen any numbers yet, so I'm not exactly sure how much we're going to get for this one, but I wouldn't have thought we'd have sold him at a loss. But it just makes sense. He's on a fairly chunky wage. We spent 42 million on him, which we need to try and recoup, and he just hasn't worked, has he? And not only did he not work in a Chelsea shirt, he went out on loan to AC Milan for the rest of last season and didn't really perform well there either. And it's a shame because, you know, it seems like we need an able deputy for Cole Palmer in that centre attacking spot. For one reason or another, Felix just does not seem to be the guy. And I'm just starting to feel bad for him at this point, right? It seems like every single time he makes a move since he moved from Benfica in the first place, it just hasn't gone well for him. He had so much potential, and Atletico Madrid initially laid out 120 million euros for him. So he was like, this is it, I've made it, I'm going to be a star. No one ever spends 100 mil on a player unless they're going to go on and be really good, right? But it just hasn't worked out that way. I bear him no ill will. I really wanted Felix to do well in a Chelsea shirt, but I guess this goes some way to actually proving Pochettino was right about him all along. wrong. It's just not worked out, man. It's just not worked out. It's a sad one. Football Therapy, one of my favourite YouTubers, calls him football's orphan. That's just so savage, man. That's just so savage. But with any luck, he's found his way back home at Benfica, and I really, really hope this deal goes through for him, because there is a player there and he'll get Champions League football, and he just deserves an opportunity to show his best self, right? Because he's still really young, man. He's like 24, 25. He's not even in his prime yet, and we're talking about him like he's spoiled milk. Do you know what I mean? But it's just because he's been around for so long. This is kind of what I was saying before about Bukayo Saka as well. We've got to be so careful with putting really, really young players out there. But hey, what can you do? Unfortunately, Joao Felix just hasn't managed to step up yet. So that's it, guys. I'm going to wrap the video up there. Lots of outgoings being talked about at the moment. There's a few tentative rumours about incomings with the likes of Morgan Rogers and Rodrygo, but they're all very tentative, and I don't really expect to see any more news about incomings until the Club World Cup's over. And that is the next video that I'm going to get onto, so keep it locked, because this one is going to be awesome. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. I hope you guys are having a wicked day, and I will catch up with you very soon. Peace.